What's going on, noobs? I am Rory, the Perpetual Noob, and welcome to another in-depth Hollow Knight guide. Today, we'll be talking about the entirety of the Pantheon of Hallownest, except for the final boss, because seriously, there is a lot to talk about. We'll discuss the boss at the end of this Pantheon in the next guide. The Pantheon of Hallownest, also known as Pantheon 5, is the final Pantheon in the Godmaster content pack and is found in Godhome. If you need, please see my Godmaster primer to learn about and how to access Godhome. To enter the Pantheon of Hallownest, we must have the Void Heart, defeat the Pantheon of the Night, knock on this shiny statue, climb to this rest spot, jump up to and climb this wall, drop down over here to the right and hit this statue to create a shortcut, and or drop down over here on the left and destroy this wall to make another shortcut, and then climb to the very top of Godhome. The Pantheon of Hallownest is the ultimate boss rush in Hollow Knight. Every single foe, and then some, that we've fought in Godhome is fought here with rest points spread throughout. Heads up, if we die anywhere in this Pantheon, we go all the way back to the beginning. Pantheon 5 follows the order of foes from Pantheons 1 and 2 fairly closely, but significantly rearranges the order of Pantheons 3 and 4. This Pantheon also contains more rest points than the 4 previous Pantheons combined, so their order is also changed. On top of that, we are fighting what are called the Ascended versions of every foe in this Pantheon. Kind of. So, in the Hall of Gods, we can fight Ascended versions of each foe. In the Hall of Gods, these Ascended versions have increased health. Everything, including spikes and other arena hazards, deals twice as much damage. Many Ascended foes have altered arenas, and some Ascended foes even have altered attacks. However, in the Pantheon of Hallownest, only foes' arenas and attacks match their Ascended forms. They still retain their original, or attuned in the Godhome vernacular, damage and health, thankfully. Since there are a total of 42 foes in this Pantheon, this includes the final boss and Grey Prince Zote if he's here, which in Godseeker mode he always will be here. I am only going to be talking in depth about new foes, foes with altered arenas, or foes with altered attacks. If you'd like to see my discussions for any foe I do not take much time to discuss in this guide, please refer to the previous Pantheon guides. I'll be talking about the foes in the order in which we fight them. Before beginning this Pantheon, I absolutely recommend, say it with me now, having the Pure Nail, maximum masks, maximum soul vessels, maximum charm notches, all nail arts, all combat-related movement abilities, especially the Shade Cloak, all empowered spells, and every charm. And if we are in Godseeker mode, we will have all of that. Do you like fighting Vengefly King? Well then you're in luck because now we get to fight 2 Vengefly Kings at the same time. A feature of this fight, all Vengeflies on screen die when we kill a Vengefly King. Things can get tricky if the 2 kings perform different attacks or get out of sync with each other. Otherwise, the same tactics I discussed for Pantheon 1 Vengefly King apply here. It's the Gru's Mother Cage match we've all been waiting for! Now the floor is separated into 3 platforms with spikes in between. The platforms are a normal dash away from each other. Gru's mother still fights as she did in Pantheon 1, so the tactics I discussed in that guide still apply. Then we fight False Knight, Massive Moss Charger, don't forget to use our spells like Shade Soul and Descending Dark here, and Hornet Protector before we get to speak with a Godseeker for the first time. Then it's time to ascend with Gorb! Again. Much like with Gru's mother, there are now only 3 pillars to stand on. These pillars are a normal dash apart. Aside from needing to avoid falling, Pantheon 1 Gorb tactics still apply. Then we fight Dung Defender. Then we fight Soul Warrior, but now Follies spawn during the fight, like what happens when we fight Soul Warrior before getting Shade Soul. These Follies have 13 health, so it will take more than bad gas to get rid of them. Handling Soul Warrior is still like it was in Pantheon 1, though Descending Dark can be more useful now thanks to its large hitbox. Then it's time to fight Brooding Malek. In this Pantheon, there's no raised platform in the middle of the arena. Now Brooding Malek wanders the entire arena and she no longer resets to the center during a jump attack. This means we've got to keep better track of our Shadow Dash. It's still safe to heal when opposite a vomit attack, or when she's walking away and spitting at us. But the lack of a raised platform makes it simpler for us to maneuver as well. The spells Descending Dark and Shade Soul, the Nail Art Cyclone Slash, and the charm Sharp Shadow are much more viable here, so we can use those to augment the tactics I discussed in Pantheon 1. Then we go right to fighting Brothers Oro and Mato. After Brothers Oro and Mato, we reach our first rest point. Hooray! Only 30 plus fights to go! Next is Dream Warrior Zero. His arena floor is now just 3 platforms of differing sizes, with the largest being the center platform. The platforms are further apart than a normal dash though. Zero still fights the same as before, so the tactics discussed for Zero in the Pantheon 2 guide are still viable here, just with less space to maneuver. I would recommend staying away from the left platform due to how small it is. Then we fight Crystal Guardian, then Soul Master, and then Double Obolobbles. Next, we fight Mantis Lords. Wait, oh no, it looks like we done goofed. Surprise! This isn't the Mantis Lords fight, this is actually the Sisters of Battle. Now we're fighting all 3 Mantis Lords at the same time. Oh, and they have more health now. They still have the same attacks, drop, dash, boomerang, but they attack with greater frequency, about 75% more frequent. The boomerang attack has several more patterns now, and when we're fighting all 3 Sisters of Battle, one of them performs a drop attack while the boomerangs are flying, so we need to keep moving. There are the patterns we know from the Mantis Lords fight. 2 boomerangs cross the arena, and 2 boomerangs converge in the center. Sisters of Battle has added a few more patterns. 2 boomerangs converge to the left or right side of the arena, 1 boomerang crosses the arena, 1 boomerang sticks to the left or right side of the arena depending on what side the Sister of Battle was on. And again, if all 3 Sisters of Battle are fighting us, there will always be one doing a drop attack when a boomerang is flying. While we're fighting all 3, the main tactic is just keep moving. Striking a Sister of Battle or boomerang with a downward slash to stay in the air, also known as pogoing, and using our Monarch wings to maneuver through the air is a useful tactic when we're fighting all 3. Descending Dark is also very helpful in the second phase. Shadow dashing is another great way to escape bad situations. Healing without charms when fighting all 3 Sisters of Battle is tricky. The way to do so is to hang out on a wall, get the Sisters of Battle throwing boomerangs at us, and once the 3rd sister has arrived, try to get back to the arena floor quickly and heal a mask. We can repeat this cycle for as long as we want. Once one Sister of Battle is defeated, the fight's timing returns to the original Mantis Lord's 2nd phase. However, the boomerang attack still has all of the patterns as when there were 3, just thankfully without a 3rd sister dropping in on us. This means we can heal without charms during any boomerang attack with good positioning and timing. Then finally, one last Sister of Battle which returns us to phase 1. The tactics I discussed for the Mantis Lords in Pantheon 2 are still viable for much of this fight. I think Sisters of Battle is what the Mantis Lords were like shortly after Traitor Lord and his followers left, full of fury and strength. By the time we fight the Mantis Lords in Mantis Village, they've grown weary and cannot muster the same energy anymore. After we defeat the Sisters of Battle, we've reached the 2nd rest point. After the rest point, it's time to fight the physics nightmare, Dream Warrior Marmu. This time, her arena is smaller, and the walls are covered in thorns, so we cannot put ourselves against the wall to stay as safe as possible from her wacky physics. Marmu still fights as she has before, so the Marmu tactics I discussed in Pantheon 2 still work here. After Marmu, we get normal fights against Fluke Marm, then Broken Vessel, then Dream Warrior Galeon, then Paintmaster Shio, and then we're at our 3rd rest point. After the 3rd rest point, we fight Hive Knight. Next is Dream Warrior Elder Hu. And now we fight the Collector, but this isn't the Collector you know and love. This Collector is angry and mean. Instead of Vengeflies, Balders, and Aspid Hunters bursting from their jars, we get Armored Squits, Sharp Balders, and Primal Aspids. Thankfully, these minions have reduced health from their regular game counterparts, so they can be destroyed in a single nail hit if we are using the Pure Nail and a Strength Charm. Clearing the minions as fast as possible is critical in this fight, so spells and nail arts are very useful. And again, there is no weird beatdown phase like there is in the Tower of Love. All other Collector tactics I've discussed in previous guides can still work here. Next, we fight God Tamer, and then Troop Master Grimm, followed by our 4th rest point. After the rest point, we find the Godseeker in a space that looks like Green Path, with the god Un far away in the distance. We can speak with the Godseeker here and learn her thoughts about Un before moving on to more fighting. After this respite, we fight the Watcher Knights. Then we fight Umu. The only change with this Umu is that the acid has been replaced with dangerous clouds, so traversing the lower part of the arena requires more aerial maneuvering. Everything else about this fight is the same. Oh, hey, Hornet! It's nice to see— Oh my god, what is happening? Also, we have to see this transformation every time. That's right, noobs! Instead of fighting the Nosk we all know and love, we are fighting Winged Nosk. This Nosk fights like they ate a Vengefly King and added his powers to their own. Winged Nosk has 4 attacks: Swoop, Summoning Screech, Outbreak, and Downpour. The Swoop attack is similar to Vengefly King's Swipe, with Winged Nosk starting high at one end of the arena, flying down to the middle with their face low, and then back up to the other side. They telegraph this attack with a quick bowing of their head, shouting, and then swooping. Their Summoning Screech attack is also similar to Vengefly King's Summoning Scream, but instead of summoning Vengeflies, Winged Nosk summons infected balloons. Winged Nosk telegraphs this attack when they rear up, flapping their wings wildly while shout lines appear and they screech like this. This attack summons multiple infected balloons, usually 2. The balloons usually begin to appear shortly after the shout lines disappear. The balloons tend to spawn somewhere in this area. The balloons usually spawn simultaneously. Notice all of these qualifiers? That's because the typical Summoning Screech summons 2 balloons simultaneously shortly after the shout lines disappear. But there are times when the balloons do not spawn simultaneously, times when there will be 3 balloons, and times when a balloon shows up much later. Winged Nosk continues fighting while balloons are around. There can be a maximum of 6 balloons in the arena. Once there are, Winged Nosk will still screech, but no more balloons are summoned. This is where the Vengefly King similarities end. Remember Nosk's Eruption attack? Well, Winged Nosk has a similar attack, though we call this one Outbreak, and instead of attacking from the center of the arena, Winged Nosk always uses this attack from an edge. Blobs of infection spew from Winged Nosk, 2 at steep arcs down, and 2 sets of 10 in wide arcs up. The blobs spread out across the arena floor with space between pairs of blobs. The blobs persist on the floor for about 2 seconds, so they will still be there when Winged Nosk swoops at us, which is how they always attack after an outbreak. Winged Nosk telegraphs this attack when they raise their head and flap their wings wildly. They scream just before the blobs appear. Winged Nosk's 4th attack is called Downpour. It's kind of similar to Nosk's Rain attack in that they fly into the ceiling and drop blobs on us. We won't start seeing this attack until Winged Nosk is reduced to half health. In the Downpour attack, after going into the ceiling, Winged Nosk drops several blobs down almost simultaneously. There are gaps between the blobs, and they do persist on the floor for about 2 seconds. But Winged Nosk doesn't begin another attack until about the time the blobs start disappearing. Winged Nosk exit the ceiling on the same side of the arena from which they entered the ceiling. Winged Nosk telegraphs this attack when they raise their head and flap their wings a couple times before yeeting themselves into the ceiling. There is no shout associated with this attack. We can hear them scurrying about up there and see dust falling from the ceiling. A little more than a second after they disappear into the ceiling, the blobs start falling. We can cast Descending Dark into a swoop, or we can jump over Winged Nosk during a swoop, which gives us the opportunity to pogo on them. Be careful though, because their wing hitbox is really strange. We can also Shadow Dash through their swoop, but that doesn't give us as many opportunities for counterattacks. Like with Vengefly King, we can further follow up with more nail damage and/or cast Shade Soul at Winged Nosk as they finish their swoop. Winged Nosk is a bit more agile, and thanks to the Outbreak attack, we cannot stay on top of Winged Nosk and just pogo on them forever like we can with Vengefly King. When Winged Nosk summons balloons, it's best to get rid of those balloons as quickly as possible because they can make navigating this fight real tricky. We do need to do some quick math to get ourselves safe from the blobs during an outbreak, but once we're there, we can use long-range attacks to damage Winged Nosk, and/or we can prepare ourselves for the imminent swoop attack. There isn't much we can do to Winged Nosk at the beginning or during a downpour, so it's best to just keep our eyes on the ceiling and get into a gap between the blobs. Once Winged Nosk returns, we have a couple seconds to attack with whatever we want before they do another attack. In between attacks, Winged Nosk will do their best to maintain a certain distance from us, meaning we can manipulate where Winged Nosk will be during some of their attacks. This can grant us extra opportunities to damage them. There are several opportunities to heal without charms in this fight. We can heal one mask safely, after shadow dashing through a swoop, before balloons are summoned, if we are in a safe space before the blobs from an outbreak land, after the blobs fall during a downpour. We can heal multiple masks if we start healing when a downpour starts and don't have to move to avoid any blobs. Because Winged Nosk tends to stay away from us, I'd recommend charms that improve our spell casting, like Shaman Stone and Spell Twister, and increase our nail's reach and damage, like Mark of Pride, Long Nail, and Fragile/Unbreakable Strength. The charm Quick Focus helps us heal safely during those no charm moments discussed earlier, and allows us to heal 3 masks during a downpour. Shape of Un, especially when combined with Quick Focus, also lets us heal more and be safer doing so during every attack but the swoop. Where did Winged Nosk even come from? Why do we never meet them in Hallownest? My theory is that Winged Nosk is the original form of Nosk. I believe that they tried to lure Hornet into their lair long ago, when Hornet was still young. Hornet fought Winged Nosk and cut off their wings. She then either used that moment to escape, or thought that that was enough to slay Winged Nosk and left. Anyway, after Winged Nosk, we fight Great Nail Sage Sly. You might think there is a rest point after Sly, but no. Now we fight Hornet Sentinel, since she was replaced by Winged Nosk earlier. Then we reach the 5th rest point. After the rest point, we fight Enraged Guardian. Next is Lost Kin. After Lost Kin is Dream Warrior No Eyes in an incredibly different arena. There's less space, fewer platforms, and nearly everything that isn't a platform is covered in thorns. Over here are spikes that we can pogo on to save ourselves if we fall in here though. The fight itself plays out the same as her earlier fights, and a lot of the tactics discussed for her earlier fights still work here. We've got to be a bit more precise with our movement now, because getting hit mid-jump can result in us falling into thorns or spikes right after. We can strike No Eyes with our nail through the thorns, especially with nail extension charms. Spells are even better for this because they bypass platforms and thorns alike. If No Eyes goes to this lower right corner, we can pogo on her, or come over to this platform and cast Shade Soul. Before No Eyes reaches 75% health, we can heal multiple masks on a platform without charms, because the ghost spawn patterns can give us the time to do so. After No Eyes reaches 75% health or less, it's much safer to heal a single mask and then move from whatever platform we are on. Then we fight Traitor Lord. Next is White Defender. Then we have our 6th rest point. After this rest point, we find the Godseeker again in a space that looks like the White Lady's tree. We can speak with the Godseeker and learn that she is looking for the White Lady, but is struggling to find her. After this break, we fight Soul Tyrant. Next comes what is arguably one of the most difficult fights in the entirety of Hollow Knight, Dream Warrior Markoth in his Ascended Arena. The fight itself plays out the same as before, but now there are a couple less platforms and a different arrangement, and no floor. It's best to stay on the ground. With the limited space for maneuvering, I recommend slowing down and implementing the solid strategy I discussed in the Pantheon 4 guide. Gather as much soul as possible during Phase 1, and unleash our spells during Phase 2 to end that phase as quickly as possible. The safest and longest strategy is to attack Markoth only during Shield Cyclones and spend the rest of our time dodging Nails and Markoth. Due to the limited floor space, it can also be a good idea to choose a corner platform. I prefer one of the top platforms, and stick to it as best as possible as we wait for a Shield Cyclone, and only abandon that platform if we can't get Markoth to stay away. Or, we can go on the offensive and be very aware of our mobility options to ensure we get to a platform or wall after attacking Markoth and dodging Nails at the same time. Without a floor, we can use the walls to help us navigate the arena and to stay as safe as possible during a Shield Cyclone. Healing without charms is still possible during the same times as in his previous fights. However, thanks to the lack of space, we need to have great positioning and or timing to heal between Nails in Phase 1. We will most likely only be able to heal one mask during a Shield Cyclone unless we are in a spot on a platform that is between the spirals the shield is traveling. And then, if we were a completionist, or a masochist, or in Godseeker mode, we get to fight Grey Prince Zote next. Because Team Cherry figured putting the 2 most random bosses in the entire game back to back was hilarious. Then we fight Failed Champion. And then we fight someone we may know, but have not seen in the Pantheon yet. Nightmare King Grim. Even if we chose to banish the Grim troop, we still have to fight NKG here. The tactics I discuss in my Nightmare King Grim guide are still applicable in this Pantheon. The introduction to his fight still involves him bursting from the Nightmare Heart, but there is no title card. The biggest change from a combat perspective is the fact that there are edges to Nightmare King Grim's arena now, so hanging out at the corners is a bit more treacherous. Aside from that, the fight plays out as it did in Hallownest, but with a shorter death scene. After this fight, there is our 7th and final rest point. After this rest point, we find the Godseeker in a space reminiscent of the White Palace. If we speak with her, we learn a bit about the Pale King. The penultimate fight of the Pantheon of Hallownest is none other than Pure Vessel. It's at this time in the other Pantheon guides when I discuss what charms are useful throughout and which are useful in part. Due to the breadth and structure of Pantheon 5, the fact that there are 7 rest points for us to change our charms if we want, we have tons of options. I'd recommend watching my previous Pantheon guides for recommendations for each Pantheon and the foes within, and adapt accordingly to the order of this Pantheon. For instance, we could equip Dream Shield from the bench after Oro and Mato to the bench after Sisters of Battle, or maybe equip Fluke Nest from after Hornet Sentinel to after White Defender. I strongly recommend completing every binding we can in the previous Pantheons. I mentioned how the bindings and lifeblood health work in my Godmaster Primer. In this Pantheon, with multiple rest points, we can stack lifeblood health if we enter a rest point with some already, up to a full extra 35 lifeblood health. This extra lifeblood health was integral in keeping me alive the first time I beat the Pantheon of Hallownest. I was of course just talking about changing charms at rest points if we need/want to, but if we enter a rest point with lifeblood health, we have a choice to make. Keep stacking more health, or adjust our charms. For this reason, it can be very important to find a charm combination that works best for you, no matter what part of the Pantheon you're in. For me, I don't change my charms until the last rest point, and we'll get to the charms for that last bench in the next guide. For everything but the last 2 fights of Pantheon 5, I equipped Strength, Mark of Pride, Shaman Stone, Dream Wielder, and Nailmaster's Glory. Thanks to the Pantheon of Hallownest having 7 rest points, Fury of the Fallen can have a much larger impact. Again, it's safest to go this route if we have completed at least 8 bindings in the other Pantheons. Ultra best would be to complete all 16 bindings. Then we activate it during Brothers Oro Mato, and survive on our lifeblood from bench to bench. Fury of the Fallen pairs best with Strength and Quick Slash. There is one charm and its combinations that I have not yet discussed in any Pantheon guide, but should have probably mentioned sooner. Deep Focus. Deep Focus requires 4 charm notches, but allows us to heal 2 masks for the same amount of soul as healing 1 mask without it, but we need to focus for twice as long. I wouldn't recommend using it on its own, but when combined with Quick Focus, we get to heal 2 masks during all of those no charm healing opportunities I've discussed in this and previous guides. We can become an even safer healing machine if we add Shape of Un, because we aren't slowed down by Deep Focus. Something that is totally valid for this and any Pantheon. Take breaks. We can't save and quit without resetting our progress, but we can pause the game, take a drink, stretch our hands, take a walk, cuddle our pets. Whatever it takes to get through this wild challenge. Thanks to Godseeker mode, we can practice against every single foe in this Pantheon in the Hall of Gods without ever having to step foot in the Pantheon of Hallownest. Well, except for whatever is behind this door, but I'm sure that's not important. The Godseeker reveals much as we encounter her while ascending this Pantheon. For starters, she's annoyed we're still here, but no longer belittling us. Progress! We've reached this highest echelon of Godhome, and she's curious to see just what we can truly achieve. There's some really cool lore revealed in listening to the Godseeker. She demonstrates just how much of a fanatic she is, wishing she could become as God, and barring that, at least bask in their presence. Yet we also learn that the gods of Hallownest, the ones the Godseeker can sense, have all disappeared in their own ways. Un is fading from the world, essentially in hibernation thanks to the loss of their followers, the Mosskin, leaving only the lush life of Greenpath behind as evidence of their once incredible power. The White Lady has intentionally hidden her power, apparently only well enough for the Godseeker to not grasp the true enormity of her strength, which drives the Godseeker crazy. Also, who is this them she's referring to? Is the Godseeker talking about the very same masters Steel Soul Jean referred to? The White Lady is such a unique creature within Hallownest. She's the only sentient tree. I've always wondered if she is originally from Hallownest, and this whole thing with the Godseeker gets me thinking that she probably isn't. The Steel Soul Jin Masters connection is probably a stretch, but I want to believe. And then there's the Pale King, the very reason the Godseeker was even drawn to Hallownest. His power was so great, she could sense him from outside Hallownest after he was already dead. No wonder the Moth Tribe betrayed the Radiants. His power level...
It's over 9,000!
This single line from Godseeker tells so much, yet raises so many questions. Like, who sealed the Godseeker away? It's believed that Hallownest was already falling before the Pale King died. So who was around and willing to expend the energy to lock up this zealot after the kingdom fell? It also sets a time for when the Godseeker first attuned to the various powers in Hallownest, indicating who was around and worthy of notice at that point in Hallownest's history, which I think is wicked cool. Obviously, the White Lady and Un were sensed, but we also have the Pure Vessel, the Nail Masters, Great Nail Sage Sly, Sisters of Battle, Wigan Nosk, and... what is that door about? And then there's this bit about the Pale King being erased completely, and the poor Godseeker has no idea why. That's it for our discussion about the Pantheon of Hallownest, minus the final boss. Thank you for joining me today, noobs. Stay tuned for future Hollow Knight guides. I'd love to hear your thoughts about everything in this Pantheon, except the final boss, in the comments below. I am the Perpetual Noob, and I'll see you all next time.